good people of YouTube? Sealord here, and today we have the brand new Tier 9 Premium Japanese Battlecruiser, the Tsurugi, in port to review for you guys today. I probably butchered that name, but that's alright. That's, par for the course here on the channel. So the Tsurugi was released on Wednesday when update 12.9 went live. Currently, she's only available in the random bundles that you can get the Japanese tokens in for the Japanese battle cruisers for their early access event. So right now you can't buy her outright, but according to Wargaming, she'll be coming out later for the normal cost of a Tier 9 premium ship. So would you want to pick her up at that point? Obviously, right now, just in the random bundles, I would highly advise against picking her up right now from that method. But before we get too much further into this, massive shout to the channel's Patreons for making this review. Oh, that dragon in the background moves. Look at that. Huh. That's cool. For making this review and all... Oh, okay. I haven't spent a lot of time in this port yet. Look at that. That's neat. For making this review and all reviews possible. Loch Ness Monster's going to pop up next or something like that. I'm not a CC nor supported by or affiliated with Wargaming in any way, shape, or form, so I do not get these ships to review for free on the channel. I have to purchase them normally either using funds from the Patreons or funds from the channel's ad revenue. So these guys helping out is a massive, massive, massive help out for this channel. If you want to support the channel, Patreon's the best way to do so, and link to that will be in the description down below. So the Tsurugi, what is it? It's pretty interesting. It's almost like a Japanese Georgia, but they didn't go quite as crazy with some of the features, although she does have quite a peculiar feature here and there. And art department, this port is gorgeous. The most beautiful thing I've seen since the Fjords port. Look at the water coming off the deck of the ship. That is awesome. Now, of course, it does that in game, but here in port, it just looks so cool in the storm. Hopefully, this is kind of like a nod that we might be getting, proper night battles in the game eventually. But yeah, port looks beautiful. Ship looks beautiful as well. Look at this thing. Of course, for the little intro bit there, we took her to a training room, got some beauty shots of her, and the model is fantastic. As always, with the art department modeling guys, they've been knocking it out of the park consistently here for the past, well, ever. Alright, so we're going to go ahead, go through the Tsurugi, talk about her stats and features here in port, and then we'll transition to some gameplay where I'll give you guys my voiceover review of the ship. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at her stats, shall we? So, I have played her a bit already, but we're going to play her some more for the purposes of this review. Hi, Mr. Dragon, how you doing there? But yeah, let's take a look at her stats, shall we? So, economically, of course, she is a Tier 9 premium ship. She's a full-on premium ship. You can tell by the colored-in icon there. So she gets the built-in Tier 9 premium ship economy on top of the permanent bonus, which is 10% to credits, 100% to your various XPs. And for the results that you see in the battles in the background, I am running the blue economic booster and then the green boosters for the other XPs. I run these boosters because as someone that does this for a second job, I of course need all the commander XP and ship XP that I can get because I have to convert that XP in order to do things like, free XP through tech lines when they get released and to retrain commanders for the purposes of reviews and other video purposes. So obviously if it's a premium ship, you'd be good off just running the blue economic booster. Ain't got to worry about the ship XP. So, her armor is a battle cruiser. So you have a 25mm bow with no type of icebreaker bow or anything like that. The stern is 25 as well, but you do have this 254mm slat that comes around to cover the steering gears and such. But again, stern is exposed in 25. Stern and bow deck are both 25. Deck is 32. Upper armor belt is 32. Main belt is 305mm, and your torpedo bulges are 32. And her citadel is high and dry and exposed. Again, it's a battle cruiser, it's a fast ship, so you gotta pay for that in some way, shape, or form. And there it be. Alright. For her turrets, the turret face is 356mm, the sides and cheeks are 190, and the back plate is 190 as well. Roof is 152. Bar bed is 314 millimeters. For survivability, she has 69,700 hit points. And, oh, I still have Yamamoto on here. Go away, Yamamoto. Alright, he shouldn't have changed anything so far because we just looked at the armor. But anyway, hit points 69,700 on the lower side for a tier 9 battleship. 41% torpedo damage reduction, that's pretty nice. For her guns, she has 6 457mm guns, so almost to that glorious 18.1 inch mark, but they are not. They are 457, so they cannot overmatch 32 millimeters of armor. And here's where things start to get interesting. So the reload time is 25 seconds base, which is very nice. The 180 time is 36 seconds, which is quite nice as well. Maximum dispersion of 234 meters at 23 kilometers. Her HE has a maximum damage of 7,300 and a 35% fire chance per shell, and can pin 77 millimeters of armor, and coming out the tubes at 805 meters a second. Her AP has a maximum damage of 13,500 and comes out the tubes at 860 meters a second. So her AP, what's interesting there, her AP shells have the same maximum damage as the American 16-inch guns. So despite these being 18-inch guns, they're doing the alpha of the American 16-inch guns, which is saying some things, but it's also not, because look at the water coming off the turret. Hold up, go back to that shot. I'm sorry, I'm just distracted like a freaking dog in PetSmart. Look at the water coming off the turret. That is beautiful. I don't know if that's going to come up on YouTube, but that's crazy. Wow. Anyway, back to the guns. So, they have the same alpha as the American 16-inch guns, which you've always heard me say they hit like 17.5-inch guns, which is true. They do. They do hit heavier than most other 16-inch guns, but, I mean, it's still, that's on the lower side for 18-inch guns. For example, the Yamato, which is only 3 millimeters bigger than the Tsurugi's guns, you get 14,800. So, yeah. Not the highest damage per shell, and she only has 6 guns. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this review. But anyway, you do get 6 of them. 2 turrets in the front with 2 guns in them, and then 1 turret in the rear with 2 guns in it as well. So for secondaries, you get 4 of the 127mm guns. They reload in 5 seconds, 7 kilometer maximum range, 2100 maximum damage, 8% fire chance, 21mm pin. And then you get 6 of the dual mounted 127s and the enclosed mounts. Same thing there. And then you get 8 of the 140mm guns in these enclosed mounts. They reload in 8 seconds, have a 7 kilometer maximum range, 2400 maximum damage, 10% fire chance, 23 millimeters of pin. So, just off the bat, look at the water collecting on the barrel and bouncing off of it. That is a thing of beauty. Wow, I'm getting so distracted. But anyway, secondaries, not the ship's thing. I can tell you that. But she does get torpedoes. You get 8 of these 610mm torps. These are similar to the Asashio's torpedoes in that they can only hit battleships and carriers, but they have a little less range, 15 kilometers. Which, I mean, for like a battleship, that's still amazing for your torpedo range, right? So when they connect, they do 20,967 maximum damage. They travel at 67 knots. They're detected from 0.9 kilometers away. 900 meters is when a ship will spot these torpedoes if they're not running something like hydroacoustic search. So that's pretty nice. Whoops. I don't know why they decide to give a bunch of battleships long-range torpedoes all of a sudden out of nowhere. For your airstrike, for your depth charges, you get 2 flights, 2 bombs per flight. AA 65, not a very high rating for tier 9 at all. You get 20 of the single-mounted 25mm guns, 12 of the tri-mounted 25mm guns, 8 of the dual-mounted 40mm guns, 2 of the dual-mounted 127s, and then the 6 enclosed 127s are also dual-purpose, and the 140s are not. Maneuverability and max speed is 35 knot space with a turning radius of 970 meters. And rudder shift time is 16 seconds. Concealment, she has very good concealment at 14.1 kilometers base. For her consumables, you do get torpedo reload booster because why not? So this is where once you disperse your torpedoes, you can slap the button, you get an 8-second reload on the next round of torpedoes. So if you really need something to die and you're that close with the deep waters, or you just really want to throw some torpedoes down a channel, there you go. And she gets 3 heals base, 348 HP per second, is active for 28 seconds, and cools down in 80 seconds. And of course you get damage con, standard damage con, 10 seconds. So that is the Tsurugi. We will go ahead, put my commander module build back on her, talk about that build, and then we'll take her into battle some more. Alrighty, for my module build, I went with main armaments mod 1 because we only got 6 guns. We kind of need them to stay in the fight. So this reduces the chance of those guns becoming incapacitated by 20% and gives us a 50% buff to the survivability of the main batteries, guns, and a 20% buff to the repair time. Same for the torpedo tubes as well, given that this thing has some pretty useful torps. That's a nice pickup as well. Damage con mod 1 because fires suck, and if we can reduce the chance of us catching on fire, we're going to do that. This gives us a 5% buff to the chance of catching on fire, and a 3% buff to the chance of flooding. And then I went with aiming systems mod 1 because, well, we only have 6 guns, and we really want those 6 shells to go where we want them to go, and this reduces the maximum dispersion by 7%. Also increases the traverse time of the torpedo tubes by 20%, and the firing range of the secondaries by 5%, and a 5% buff to the dispersion of the secondary battery guns. Again, not really a thing you're going to be using on the Tsurugi, but the mod does do that. And then Damage Con Mod 2, this gives us a 50% buff to the fire and flooding recovery times, which the less time you're on fire, the less time you're flooding, the less damage you're taking, and that's pretty darn good. Then we went and took Concealment Systems Mod 1. This gives us a 10% buff to our concealment, so that already excellent concealment, this helps us get that down even more. And then I took Main Battery Mod 3 for a buff to our reload time of 12%. For Yamamoto over here, I went with a pretty much standard, Japanese battleship build. So, a normal battleship tank build. So preventive maintenance to give us a 45% buff to the chance of our modules becoming incapacitated. So the main turrets, the torpedo tubes, the steering gears, and the engine. Very important things. Again, if we can cut that down from getting knocked out, we should. And then I took Grease the Gears for Yamamoto. This gives us a 25% buff to the main battery's rotation time. Now with Yamamoto, that's a special thing. With most commanders, I believe it's 20%. Now you could very well take Brisk if you want to, since this ship is very stealthy and is very fast. If you want a ship that can run around, I think with Brisk, with a 10% buff to the speed, you're going to be going darn near 40 knots. So that could also be something you could do. Then I went and took Adrenaline Rush because, well, if we take damage, this decreases the reload time of our main battery guns for every 1% of our ship HP that is lost. So, you take damage, faster reload. Then I also went and took Basics of Survivability because this cuts back on the fire and flooding time by another 15%, and also on the module restoration time by 15%. So the faster we can recover from those fires and those floods, the faster we can stop taking damage, the faster our modules can get back in action, the better. Then I went and took Emergency Repair Expert. This gives us another charge of the heal and a 10% buff to the runtime of the heal and a 10% buff to the runtime of Damage Con. For Damage Con, every second Damage Con is active, that's less damage you're taking, because if you're under fire and they're hitting you with HE, you will not take any new instances of fire or flooding while Damage Con is active. And of course for the heal, the longer it runs, the more health you are regenerating. We went and took Concealment Expert because, well, another 10% buff to our concealment is excellent. The stealthier we are, the better. And then lastly, we took Fire Prevention Expert. This gives us a 10% buff to the chance of catching on fire and reduces the amount of fires we can have on our ship from 4 to 3. So less fires, less damage overall. So what does that do to the Tsurugi? Glad you asked. So the guns now, with the modules, have a maximum dispersion of 217 meters and a reload time of just 22 seconds. So that's very good. That's a nice quick reload there on 18-inch guns. For the maneuverability now with the flag, we are going 36.8 knots. So again, if you do take Brisk, you will be pretty much going 40. And then for the concealment, we are now down to 11.5 kilometers. That is most excellent and is great for dictating the terms of your engagement. So I'm going to go ahead, pop into battle with Tsurugi. I'll meet you guys there with my voiceover review of the Tsurugi. Alright guys, voiceover Sealord here, and the Tsurugi. So the Tsurugi, it is to be noted that the ship was buffed, I think either very shortly before or with patch 12.9, so either right before it was released or literally at release. So a lot of the other reviews that you might see of the ship out there, they're probably of the older version of the ship, not this new version that has I believe a 10-second faster turret rotation time, and they gave her a buff to her accuracy, which I can say was very much needed, because the ship, it's interesting how the guns seem to handle and how they work and how you get your damage in with the Tsurugi. Now, this being a battleship, of course, guns and armor are the two main things that you should be interested in, and are, of course, some of the more important factors in a battleship. So we'll start with the guns. So the guns are indeed quite accurate, you know, on paper and looking at their performance in game. The dispersion is, in most cases, pretty decent to downright good. I've had a few salvos in the matches that I've played with her. You know, you get those magic salvos where, like, the shells don't move after they come out, and you also get the good roll on the Sigma to where they come out in a very tight pattern. I've had quite a few of those in my time with the ship, which is quite good for a ship that only has 6 guns. On the other hand, too, I have had the salvos where it's like, you know, they remove the rifling from the guns and the shells kind of go all over the place, but those salvos are pretty few and far in between from my experiences so far. Most salvos are going to land you somewhere in the middle, leaning more towards the good tight salvos from what I've seen so far with the Tsurugi. Now, that is very good, which means you get shells on target. You might be thinking, okay, so you got 6 18-inch guns a la the Georgia, and you can get shells on target. Surely this thing must be like, you know, this amazing Death Strike machine with 6 18-inch guns. Well, not really. It's a little weird how the shells perform, and I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but what's happening is that I'm getting shells on target. However, in many cases, I'm not getting those salvos that, you know, make you go, ooh, ah, you know, when you eat that Georgia salvo or that Ohio salvo, and, you know, one shell really friggin' bites, and now, you know, you're down 13,000, 14,000, 15,000 HP. Or like with the Thunderer 2 or any of the other, you know, 457mm ships in game, you have those salvos where either 1 or 2 shells fully bought into the target, and, you know, you remove a fifth, a fourth of their HP. I didn't really have that happen with the Tsurugi, especially when engaging other battleships. Now, of course, too, against cruisers, that's a different story, but I mean, like, it's a cruiser, right? But talking about battleships and other more heavily armored targets, I never had that happen, which was weird. It was like the shells weren't making it to the Citadel, like if they're somehow short fused almost. But at the same time too, of course, I'm getting tons of overpins because they are 18-inch shells, and when you're firing at ships from 18, 19 kilometers away, even with the most accurate guns in the game, there's going to be a little bit of dispersion here and there. You know, you're going to hit some of the superstructures, some of the extremities and such. You're not always going to hit the middle, you know, meaty, chunky part of the ship. So that's to be expected. But again, if they're perhaps maybe pseudo short fuse AP, you wouldn't be getting as many overpins as I've been getting. So that's just something weird that I've noticed happening with the shells. I don't know what's going on. It might just be me, but that's what's happening. Now, on the flip side, I am landing a lot of shots, and I'm not the best guy at aiming in this game, especially when it comes to sniping. I play very much mid to close range, not mid to long range, as a Tsurugi is meant to be played. But even me, with my not the best aim, I'm not having any troubles hitting the ship, right? So, despite me not getting any of these big, you know, alpha strikes, I'm getting consistent damage, right? So, that's pretty good. And the guns, especially with the reload module, 22 seconds is where you start out at. With the armor that this ship has, you're going to eat plenty of damage, trust me. Your reload time is going to be going pretty south pretty fast, which is great. So now you have 6 18-inch guns that, as you continue to exist in the game, you're getting a faster and faster and faster reload time. And before you know it, you're going to have a sub 20-second reload time, not before too long. Now, of course, too, if you have Yamamoto and you manage to pop his skill, you do get like a 10-second reload time when you're on low HP. How do I know? Observe the game in the background, and you'll see. So that's also something. But, of course, that's with Yamamoto, Special Commander. That's certainly a rare situation. But for just a normal commander with Adrenaline Rush, it is good. So that takes us to the armor. The ship is a Battlecruiser. 25mm bow, 25mm stern. Now the stern does get that nice big old slat of armor going down the side to just over the steering gears. When you are kiting, that's a very nice piece of armor to have, and the ship is much better at kiting than it is at pushing, of course, in large part thanks to that slat of armor. If you can angle correctly, which isn't really hard to do in the ship, and still get all your guns on target, you can be a pretty good thorn in the side. 6 18-inch shells coming constantly at the enemy team. It's going to make them very much, not have a good time. And again, too, against cruisers, of course, they're 18-inch guns, right? They're going to hurt when you catch a cruiser's broadside. So, anyway, to the armor, like I was supposed to be talking about, it's a Battlecruiser. You're going to be eating damage. It's not a ship that you sit there and you tank in. Typically, I was playing at like 15 kilometers plus with this thing. I didn't really want to get any closer because, like you guys saw in port, the Citadel is massive and exposed. So just, kind of running along, playing with the throttle at that, 15, 16, 18 kilometer range, and just speed up a little bit, slow down a little bit, do a little bit of throttle juking in this Battlecruiser. It was working fairly well. You can't sit there like you can in like an angled Yamato or an angled GK and bounce shells off of your armor, because your armor isn't that thick. You definitely have to be on the move, and you don't want to stop unless the enemy team is distracted by something else, or you're not to focus their attention one way or the other. Ideally, you want to keep moving, right? Either forward or backwards, just keep moving. You can't sit there and tank in this thing. That's to be no surprise. It's a Battlecruiser. It's advertised as such, so there you go. Now, going on to the speed, the trade-off for having so little armor, the thing is very fast. Again, with the speed flag, 36 knots. If you want to take brisk, you're going to be pushing 40 knots without any type of speed boost either. So that's great too. When you need to either run down a flank or run away, you can do that quite well with the ship. You can use your stealth and your speed to get to the side of the enemy ships and start delivering 6 18-inch shells to their side every 22 seconds. That's quite fearsome. And not to mention as well, you still have the deep water torpedoes. So when you are on their side, not only can you be punching them with 6 18-inch guns, you can be tossing these deep waters at them, which of course, 4 deep waters per salvo, that's 80k alpha, 80k and change alpha, every rack of torpedoes that you can potentially, have delivered to the side of an enemy battleship. So that's quite good as well. And that's also another thing for it being an excellent kiting battleship, is those torpedoes as well. Which I didn't really get too many hits with the torps, but definitely, obviously, if you're going to sit there and kite a flank, they are useful, and if someone does run into them, they're going to hurt, as I'm sure most of you battleship captains out there know from your run-ins with your local Asacios. So, as far as the Battlecruiser goes, it's ticking all the boxes. It's fast, it's maneuverable, it's stealthy, you have big guns that are fairly accurate, so we're doing great so far. Now, of course, AA, it's 64 at Tier 9. It doesn't have any AA, right? So, yeah, but again, with the CV rework world, that's kind of par for the course when it comes to AA. Now, the concealment is very, very, very good. 11 kilometers and change for your concealment. That is excellent. With a ship this fast, you can so easily dictate the terms of your engagement. If you're eating too much damage, you see your health is getting down too low, with the armor that this ship has, that's going to happen. You can just stop firing and run. It is such a nice thing to have concealment that is that freaking good. And I had to do that several times, because you do have one less heal than most other battleships do. So you have to be very conscious about, where's my HP at? I'm taking too much. I need to back off and heal, and maybe reposition myself as well. And having that concealment, it's great for that. So all in all, put all this together and you get a battleship, a battlecruiser that, in my opinion, is pretty freaking good. And once you get used to the aiming, because what does happen a lot of times, what happened with me when I first took this thing out, most of us battleship players, you know, especially if you're playing ships like the Germans and such, we know that the shells aren't going to exactly go where we want them to go, so we kind of go, you know, right around there. In that general area, the shells are land, and I should get a couple of good hits. I believe what's happening here is that this ship is running to the situation of the shells are so accurate that little bit of, yeah, about there, you're not going to be able to do that. So you have to get used to saying, okay, I want to try and hit, you know, his superstructure, his side, his extremities. They are that good at times. But that Japanese dispersion, that Japanese vertical dispersion does definitely rear its head from time to time, although not as much as some other Japanese battleships do. And on a ship that only has 6 guns, that's very good. So it's a consistent ship, I'll give it that. Especially if you can aim, you're going to be doing quite well. Now, of course, this is a battle cruiser and not a battleship. You can't sit there and tank, you can't face tank the enemy team, and you only have 457s, right? So when the enemy does start to face tank you kind of go, oh, that ain't great. Because now you only have 6 guns with 18-inch AP, that's not 18.1-inch, so you can't overmatch 32 millimeters of armor. And you only have a 30% fire chance per shell. So, while yes, you can throw HE in their face, it's not going to be that great, right? You're not going to be setting too many fires, at least from my experiences. So what I typically would try to do would try to, you know, go dark, reposition, try to get on their side, or get to a better angle to where I could dunk shells into their superstructure or something like that. But that does very much suck when that happens, and you should see that happen in the background footage quite a bit. So, yeah. It's consistent if you can find the sides or find the angles for the shells to bite into, but at the end of the day, the enemy can just go straight bow into you, and then, well, you're stuck with some mediocre HE in order to deal with that. But in my experiences, however, the ship performed pretty well. I did get into some trouble with the speed and the armor because, you know, from playing slower battleships and going to this thing that's quite fast, I can get into trouble that much faster and have to turn around and run away. But you know what? Thanks to the concealment and the speed, I was able to do that pretty comfortably. And again, that speed and that concealment combo is such a good combination that it's, you know, it's great. So this ship does kind of give me vibes of the older premium ships, where they didn't necessarily have some type of gimmick, some type of silly consumable that defined them. It's a ship that has a set of characteristics that are relatively unique to it, and it does, you know, of course, borrow for some other ships and such, as premiums tend to be, right? So it's kind of like an older premium in my mind. There's no reload, you know, alternative firing mode or anything like that. It's just, you know, a nice premium ship. I guess you could say the torpedo reload booster is kind of a gimmick, which, yeah, I'll give you that, but, like, I don't know, I never really used it that much. I forgot that it existed half of the time anyway, because, again, the torpedoes, you know, 15 kilometers, that's quite a ways to be dumping torpedoes from, and if you're a battleship player, you're probably not really used to playing torpedo boats, so, you know, by the time you send one down there, and you may want to send another rack behind it, the ship's probably already moved and your prediction's off. But, you know, in a situation where you have a drive-by, maybe you're drive-buying like a Yami, well, it doesn't really matter because they're deep water torpedoes. Yeah, you're drive-buying something that's got a ton of HP, right? And you need 2 racks to dump the torpedoes into, 2 racks of torpedoes to dump into them. Stop the reload booster, 8 seconds later you got a second rack. Very useful there. And, I mean, it is a useful thing for it to have, but I don't think it's a gimmick that, like, defines the ship, right? Like, you don't play it around the torpedoes. They're a nice addition, but you are a battleship with guns, right? Not a battleship with torpedoes. That's how you should see it, at least. But yeah. So overall, if I had to give this thing a numerical rating, I would give the Tsurugi an 8 out of 10. The guns are consistent. You got 18-inch guns, which means you can overmatch 30 millimeters of armor. The alpha is on the lower side, but it's not the end of the world with how consistent the guns just are. And again, that 22-second reload with the reload module is great. And the ballistics of the shells are comfortable enough to where I'm sure you could slap the range module on there and go for broke with it, but my aim ain't that good, so I'm with the reload module route. Deep water torpedoes, of course, against battleships and carriers, those are excellent. They're going to be making their days quite unpleasant for those that receive the deep water torpedoes. Fast, concealment's great. It's pretty fun to drive around, run around at mid-range, and just, keep dumping 18-inch shells on everybody. The cons being, of course, low HP, bad armor, bad AA. I can't stress that enough. The AA is terrible. So, yeah, gotta be extra vigilant about what you're going on about doing in your match there. So, guys, that's my 2 cents on the Tsurugi. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.